Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. Today I have a video that I've been thinking about making and been putting it off a little bit, but I think it's essential now, especially with what's going on in the world. And like I say, the game is the teacher, but that has a real deep meaning. I can draw bridges from the game of pool to just about anything, especially any kind of deception or hustling, from my background in pool. I started when I was very young, and I'm going to talk about a couple things today that are on the dark side as far as, in my opinion. And I don't have any judgments against pool players that do whatever they have to do, or football players, basketball players, baseball players. Every professional athlete is going to be confronted by this type of stuff. And the more money that's involved, the more likely there's something going on. And that's, when players are asked to throw a match or throw a game. I have a real good friend in Dallas. It's one of the biggest bookmakers and one of the smartest ones, I would venture to bet. Said that he thought over 80% of the NFL football games were fixed in some way, shape, or form. That means either the players or the refs or the coaches or, usually probably a combination of all. A lot of people don't want to believe that, but, there's people now doing videos of some of these games that's just too obvious. I mean, they're making it look too obvious because people just can't see it. And that's true with a lot of things when it comes to hustling, that, there's mental blocks that I think a lot of people have, mainly because they don't want to believe that there's this type of dishonesty or evil in the world. I was subjected to it at a young age. I've never had to dump anybody, but like I said, I don't judge players that do. I don't respect them necessarily, but, sometimes people have to do what they have to do, and it's none of my business. I got to take care of myself, and my objective in putting these type of videos out is to help you to be able to see, not necessarily in pool, but in life, especially at the higher levels, what's going on and, how these things work. Even though I've never dumped anybody, which means somebody put up money for me and I lost it on purpose, the closest I ever came was when I was 16 years old, and there was some professional pool hustlers, who will go unnamed, in my area in Missouri, and I knew about a spot where people gambled and told them about it, so they wanted me to go over there with them, and it's the first time that I ever went into a place and was acting like I didn't know people that I actually knew. This happens a lot, and I did it a lot, not necessarily like this. Usually we were working together, where one of us would go in a place and then maybe the other two of us would come in later, and we'd pretend like we didn't know each other. And, we have ways of doing that that's pretty convincing. But on this particular instance, when I was in that bar and my friends were in there, it came up to where, they wanted me to play, one of my friends. Now, just to be clear, I couldn't beat him anyway. He was a better player than me, for sure, when I was 16. Now, later on, of course I caught up with him and beat him, but he was a really good player. So I did get up and play him, and like I said, I couldn't have won anyway, but I did feel like it was dishonest. It was dishonest. And I ended up, losing like 10 games, and people were betting on the side, and it didn't agree with me. And I'm going to tell you what happened, because I don't think it was any accident. or coincidence that it happened right after that. After we left the bar and I was driving back to my home, and I'm from Green City, Missouri, a little town of 629 people, and where we were was probably about a 90-minute drive from there. So after we were done and we split up the money and they went along their merry way on the road, I was driving back. I was driving a green TR7. If you've ever seen those cars, they look like a wedge. And why that's funny is I was driving about 65 miles an hour on this road that looked a lot like the one I'm on now, like this. I'm driving on a road, smaller highway, home, and suddenly a deer runs out in front of me. I hit that deer going somewhere between 60 and 65 miles an hour. And I hit that car, like I said, it looks like a wedge, those Triumph TR7s, and the deer went straight up, you know. I got out of the car and looked up in the trees to see if I could to see it, but when I hit the deer, I did 1.5 turns, like a 360 and a half, and ended up on the other side of the road, facing the other way. There were ditches on both sides of the road, and I mean, I could have went off them, and it probably wouldn't have killed me, but it wouldn't have been a good thing, and I wouldn't have been able to drive the car. Would have had to have it towed. But the car started it up. Like I said, I got out of the car and looked for that deer because, you know, I was a little bit in shock, and I didn't see the deer. But I got back in the car started, and I turned the car around and drove home. Well, it basically totaled the car, though, so I ended up selling the car. But I thought that was like a karma thing, and it happened immediately with me, and it was a clear message, and I was paying attention to not do stuff like that, you know, because I really, to this day, believe that I hit that deer because of what I did in playing that friend of mine and people betting on me. So even though it was a bad thing to happen, you know, of course, you know, when you're 16 and you total a car, it's not a very good thing. But or it might have been 17. But anyway, I haven't thought about that in a while. But the reason I say that is, you know, to make sure that you understand that I don't do stuff like that, and I believe that if I did, I probably wouldn't be alive right now, because a lot of the stuff that happens to me is pretty severe, it seems like, when it comes to this type of stuff. So I was introduced to these type of hustles at a very young age, like I said, and you know, I've talked about the double steering. I don't think I've ever seen a spot where somebody's losing a lot of money that they didn't have a so-called best friend that wasn't steering them into the games. So usually when somebody's losing a lot of money, you can look around them, and whoever they're hanging out with is generally going to be in with the some of the hustlers that's beating them. And a lot of times you can't play these guys unless these other people are in. That was true in some of the major spots that I was in, like the Rack in Detroit. There were 7 guys there that if they weren't in with you, you didn't get to play, especially the big gamblers. They would knock the game and not let you play. So you had to cut them in. And I've told about playing that Cletus and winning $18,000. Johnny Ross set up that game, and I got 30%. So I beat him out of 18,000 and got 5,400. And if you heard that story, I had to pay $1,800 in pool time because of the The deal that they had there, you could practice for free, but you couldn't play. The big money games without giving them a percentage. And they had the 10% man and the 5% man. Somebody pulling out in front of me. Telling these stories about wrecking cars and doing this, yeah. It doesn't matter to me. And please don't tell me to wear a seatbelt. That's definitely not something I do unless it's raining or snowing or dangerous situations. So, as a teenager, I was going to these big pool rooms and mixing with some of the greatest pool hustlers in the world. Like Omaha John and Weldon Rogers and, Johnny Ross and Sammy Jones and James Christopher and Frisco Jack Cooney and Rusty Brandemeyer, and I was around some of the absolute very best, and I picked up things from all of them, especially the ones that I traveled with. And that type of a seasoning is so important, and I call it a PhD, a pool hall degree. I'm going to pull over and finish this so I don't make any mistakes. Because this is important. I want people to know, again, most people aren't around pool, and this doesn't really concern you as far as somebody dumping you off or double steering you. A double steer is, like I said, if some big money man has this so-called best friend with him, and his best friend's telling him to play me, for instance, but he's really in with me, not with the guy that he's friends with, that's a double steer. And then there's triple steers, to where, it would be one more level of that, where, let's say this guy is double steering a guy into me, but he actually isn't double steering me. The guy actually can beat me, and he's in with the other guy. So there's triple steers. The main thing is the information has to come from a reliable, trusted source. And how they do it now is with your favorite media. There's people that like this station or Fox or CNN, and they're all owned by the same people. So it's just an organized double steer. Because any type of topic that comes up, if you go to one of those channels, it'll tell you one side of the story, and the other channel will tell you the other side of the story. And one station's designed to trap a certain type of person, and the other one traps the other types of people. People like me and hopefully you understand this and won't watch that stuff, because none of it's true. It's got down. There was something called the Smith-Mundt Act in 2012, and this was a law that the American citizens couldn't be propagandized legally by their media. Well, in 2012, they overturned that, and now it is legal for our media to propagandize us. That means it's legal for them to double steer us. How many people have heard of Smith-Mundt Act? Have you? Look it up. Smith-Mundt, M-U-N-D-T. I can't go into detail about any of this stuff. I can in person, or, if somebody's real interested, I try to answer questions, but this stuff is heavily censored, and I'm just not going to get into that. I want to keep everything about pool, but the game is the teacher, so you can take this knowledge about pool and transfer it to whatever you feel necessary. But the other thing is, when you've got two people or media sources that are double steering people, if they ever agree where they're saying the same thing to both types of people, That's where you really got to watch out, because that means it's a staged event. That means they're actually creating that themselves and acting like it's some kind of accident or that it's happening on its own, but it's actually not. It's all staged, it's all scripted, and that is 100% when two conflicting news sources is agreeing on one particular topic. I can think of one in particular in 2020 that they both agreed on, and I think most of us have figured out that that wasn't true at all. And I can explain all the details of any of these hustles, but not here. Only in person and some type of a private communication. But that knowledge and experience that I got in the pool rooms, that PhD, that pool hall degree, is I didn't realize how important it was and how much it would come up in the rest of my life. I mean, I've been into some big business deals, and in 2001, I did, over $8 million in sales in two of my businesses, CJ's Billiard Palace and Carson's Palace in Dallas. And I'm not saying that to brag in any way. I'm just saying that it was because of my experience with pool that enabled me to figure out how to put together these big business deals. And another thing that I was interested in as a result of pool hustling was mind control. I have a degree, a master's degree in hypnosis. I have studied a lot about social engineering and how propaganda was created. And there again, I could understand all this stuff because I had a referential index from hustling pool and being around pool rooms. And after you understand these hustles at the simpler levels, it doesn't matter how much money they use and how exorbitant the hustle is, you can see right through it. It's got the telltale signs. And I remember there's a mind control program that I don't know if it's still available. It's called Silva Mind Control. Jose Silva is the one that created it. And I went through that course in Dallas. I had probably about 50 people in my in the class that I was in. Well, one day it was I think a 3-day course. Anyway, on the last day, they had taught us all these things about, this was about more like examining your psychic abilities and strengthening them, and lucid dreaming, and they showed you, these hypnotic techniques to be able to, to do things that seemed like ESP, extrasensory perception. And I had developed kind of a seventh sense for this stuff from hustling pool and being around all the situations. Because when you're in real life situations, it's much, much better than learning things in a classroom. So all this stuff that I'd learned being around these professional pool hustlers and gamblers and all these situations had really, affected me deeply mentally. And, just like my pool playing itself, I learned how to play gambling and hustling and in kind of dangerous situations. So when I went on the pool tour in Toronto, Canada, my first tournament, I beat Efren Reyes, Earl Strickland, Mike LeBron, Jimmy Rempe, Chris Wood, who was the best player from Canada at the time, and I finished 4th in my first professional tournament. But it was because of the seasoning that I had in these dangerous situations that, playing guys like Efren Reyes and Earl Strickland really didn't bother me. I knew I could beat them, at least the first time, because it's kind of like ambushing somebody. They weren't expecting somebody that they didn't know to play at their level. So when that happens, you generally got one match that you can beat them, and then if they see any weakness, you may never beat them again. So you really, anybody can get lucky and win a pool set, race to 11 or 9 or whatever, but if you want to keep doing it, you actually have to have the goods. You have to have the skills, and you definitely have to have the fundamentals, because we can see if somebody has flaws in their game or their stroke or their alignment. I can see it in just minutes and be able to tell how well somebody plays. And they can disguise what they do on the table, but I look more at the physical fundamentals. I look at the feet and the hands and then the rest of the positions of the body to be able to tell me how well somebody plays, because they generally won't disguise that. Somebody like me might. If I was still hustling pool, I could fool people, because I would change my footwork, and I would change that in a way that when they watched me, they would be thrown off. But again, I don't do that. I don't care about the pool anymore. People ask me why I don't go to these big gambling tournaments, and it's because I can see when people are doing business. That's the dumping. When one player's trying to lose on purpose, I can tell if I watch the match long enough. The only one that I'll go to is Buffalo's tournament in New Orleans. And, they can't control what the players do, but see, the guys that hang around Buffalo's in New Orleans are super smart. We call them triple smart. I don't mess with them very much because they know every trick in the book. But they also will keep these players from doing business and dumping because they can see it too. So I'm not the only one that has this gift. Mine has just been refined and educated, and it's been something that's been a passion of mine for a number of years. I mean, I got my master's degree in hypnosis 35 years ago, and I've been studying that kind of stuff ever since. I didn't learn hypnosis to be able to hypnotize people as much as to recognize when it's happening to me. Just like martial arts. I didn't learn martial arts to beat people up. I learned martial arts to be able to defend myself, my friends, my family, or victims in a crime or something. I will never hesitate, if somebody's is getting hurt or in a situation, to defend them and use lethal force if needed. I've been in over 20 bar fights. I'm very used to violence, and I've got a really good track record. And I'm not bragging about that. I'm just saying that the skills that you develop in life, I think you should use them for the betterment of other people, and especially to keep people safe. And that's what's going on now. There's some big propaganda pieces being run on us now that's powerful. And it's to hurt a lot of people, especially us in this country. It may not look like it right now, but, some things are being stirred up. And it's the best time to be able to understand these hustling techniques so that you can recognize what they're doing and seek out the truth, because it is available. You just have to look for it. So, there's just, countless stories I could tell about, these type of things. One of the most famous, story about throwing a match was the Challenge of Champions. And everybody probably that's hearing this knows that story. I'm not going to go into it. But the one thing I do want to correct is people say that because of what they did at the Challenge of Champions, that's why pool, that you can't gamble on it. That's why they won't take, bets in Las Vegas. But that's not true, because I played in that Challenge of Champions 2 years later, and they were still booking the matches. I could have bet on myself. I've never bet on myself in a tournament. I've never even had the inclination to bet on myself in a tournament. Other than I've been in the finals in some smaller tournaments back when I was younger, and instead of asking to split the money, a lot of times we'd ask them if they wanted to play for it all. That's the difference between the mentality of when I was growing up compared to now, is a lot of these finals and smaller tournaments especially, they'll just cut up the money. They'll just split the money. We would never have done that. We would play for all the money. Like if first place was going to get 300 and second was 150, a lot of times they would split the 450 these days. We would play for the 450, so that's just a different mindset. So, that's just another thing where there's misinformation. See, I know for sure because I played in that Challenge of Champions tournament 2 years later, and I even had a guy, we were talking about it online, and he sent me the page that had the different players that was in that tournament with me and what the odds were. Mine were 7-2. So if I bet $2, I could win $7 if I won that tournament. I didn't bet on myself, and like I said, I think Johnny Archer was 7-3, so he was more of a favorite than I was. But there was only 8 people in the tournament, and that's what I never could understand about the one that people say was dumped is the guy that won the tournament was over 20-1 on the money, and he was a U.S. Open champion. Now, how does that, see, that's what I don't understand, is who made that line? And I've asked around to some of those guys that should know, and they wouldn't tell me. I don't think they knew, but maybe they just have to keep that to themselves. I don't know. I respect all that. But anyway, when it comes to gambling, hustling, and maneuvering around these pool rooms or in life right now, just make sure that you realize that just because you like somebody or you like a certain source of information does not mean that they're on your side. They could be double steering you. So I look at that very, very seriously these days, and it will literally mean the difference between life and death to millions of people in this particular thing that I'm talking about. So anyway, if you have any questions, I'll answer what I can online, or, if you know me personally and you want to know any more details, I'll be glad to help you as much as I can. I think it's that important. No matter what the personal consequences to me, I feel the need to share my experience and my talents and my gift for understanding how to see these deceptions so that it can benefit humanity. That's what I believe. Till next time, this is CJ, and remember, the game is the teacher.